let's go ahead and get started as we let other people join us. But we're so glad that you joined us today for our free webinar, Building Bridges, Communicating Across Languages and Culture. Before we begin, I just want to do a few quick housekeeping notes. I have muted everybody just to minimize background noise and distractions, but you will have a chance to unmute yourself during the Q&A portion of our presentation. I am recording this webinar today, and we will be sharing it with everybody that registered afterwards, and it will be also posted on our website. I'll be turning on our captions. If you find this to be distracting, you are able to turn it off for yourself using the settings at the bottom. We warmly welcome your questions, so feel free to type your questions in the chat box as they come to you. Like I said, we'll have some time to answer them at the end. But if you haven't found the chat box yet, please go ahead and locate that, and please share your name and what organization you're with. But we're still delighted to have Maya and Ariadne here with us today, and we look forward to a great informative webinar. On to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can start?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I cannot see your faces, but welcome to our webinar, Building Bridges, Communicating Across Language and Culture. We have a lot of people who signed for this webinar. We are really happy with that. And this shows that the topic is really relevant and interesting. Just a few things that about our webinar today. It will be recorded. You will have access to it after the presentation, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And our focus will be to engage you in interactive activities, in discussions. We want to hear what you think. We are going to be talking with you, not talking at you today. And the goal is to provide you with some tools, some practical strategies and insights that you can take away. My name is Maya Lane. We can introduce ourselves now. My name is Maya Lane. I am originally from Bulgaria. I have been a teacher of English all my life. I started teaching in Bulgaria 35 years ago. Then I moved to the United States. I taught English at all levels of education, including the university level, where I taught with Dr. Miranda, who was my director at USF. And I also founded a nonprofit in 2020 to help new immigrants who come to our community to integrate and receive mentoring, tutoring, and resources. So now I would like to pass the microphone to Dr. Miranda.
Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Ariadne Miranda, but you can call me Ari. Many people call me Ari, and I'm delighted to be with you here this afternoon. So I am originally from Panama, and I am a trained linguist, and I also have a PhD in communication. And throughout my professional career, I have worked very closely with multilingual students, particularly in higher education at USF. I worked at the intensive English program there for many, many years, more than 20 years. And so I had the privilege to do that. More recently, I started my own company, the AM Communication Collective, about 3 years ago. And what I do there, my mission is to offer language courses as well as intercultural competence workshops to individuals and organizations. And my research interests are bilingualism, accent perception, and I'm also very, very interested in language access, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So we are very excited, and we're getting started right away to welcome, a warm welcome to all of you today. And you can use the chat, as we said, to write things, comments, etc. as we go. So what the first thing we want to do is to show you a video. This is a very powerful and emotional video about language access. It's about 2 minutes, I would say. and it's very emotional. And what we would like you to do as we play the video is to use the chat to write any emotions that may come up as you watch this video, thoughts, feelings, whatever it is that comes up for you. Okay, so let's do it.
Doctor on Apertio. That's Tandoro.
Excuse me, sir. I'm so sorry. She's been crying nonstop. She has a temperature of 105. I don't know what to do.
Marabidig. And be paroles
No,
lasant.
please, just every time I feed her, she throws up. I don't know.
Be paroles
I don't understand what
lasant.
you're saying. What are you saying? Can you just look at her? No, she's burning up. Just feel.
Fayu paroles la anglan.
No, what? She's burning up. Feel her head.
Tranquilly, Kananche. The Monday is Askan.
What is he doing?
Do you have?
My baby, she's got a temperature of 105. Every time I feed her, she throws up. Please, can you? She's burning up. Feel her head. Please, just feel her head. Feel her head. Just someone let me in to see the doctor. No, does anyone understand what I'm saying? Please, someone help me.
So we see some comments coming up, but we're going to give you time to write any thoughts that come up in the chat. Frustrated, distressed, alone, sad. People ignoring the baby, right? Ignoring the issue in front of them, right? Desperation, panic, frustration, insensitivity, judgment. Yes.
That was very good comment, that you can be judged.
Yes, feeling dismissive, right? Like you are not being seen. I think that's something really poignant, right? Like not being seen when you come up to ask, to get help for services. And as it's very emotional, very powerful, of course, but I want you all to think the stakes are high. For this particular client, it's a situation of life and death, but think about your own organizations. It could mean someone asking for food assistance, not being able to access food for their families. Or it could mean someone enrolling the wrong service. All of these things could be implications of this gap between the services that you provide and the access. So all of these emotions that you're sharing, yes, they are very, very, very valid. And you feel this. Imagine the client. What is this person feeling at that moment, right? Total desperation. So that's something we want to underscore today is this, like, what can we do? What can we do from our organizations to address this? So I'm going to now turn it to Maya, who's going to talk to us about the session goals for today.
Yes, very briefly. The video is a testament that we want to talk about how language is power and how language gives you the power in society. So we will start with a review of the linguistic diversity in Hillsborough County. Ari will look at the data. And this is important to realize how many people need help and what is the impact on your services. And then we will move on to cultural dimensions, cultural awareness and what it means and how we can be culturally aware and how this shapes, culture shapes identity and we can build trust through cultural awareness. And we will end with some practical strategies that you can use starting Monday with my multilingual communities or clients. We will talk about universal design for learning, and other cross-cultural communication strategies. So the first topic will be the data about your community. Ari will share some of the data.
Yes. Thank you, Maya. So let's ground ourselves in some data. I think this will give us some context. So the data that we're using today is from the US Census Bureau. This particular set of data is from 2019. And the first thing that we notice is obviously, maybe obviously, I think for many of us, is that Spanish is the dominant additional language in the United States. But I think what is of great interest is that multilingualism spans generations. So we have children 5 years old up to 60 years and 60 years old and older. So in the services that we provide every day in our organizations, we need to keep in mind, how can we reach people, not just the individual, but how can we reach families, units of people? How can we communicate with them? It's different to communicate with a child than with somebody much older. So those are important considerations. The second graph talks to us about people that are native born here, but they still may be using a language other than English at home, and naturalized citizens and people who are not citizens. So this idea that we are serving really everybody, regardless of their immigration status. Like, the need is great, the need is vast, and we are here to meet it with useful and practicable communication strategies to close that language gap. And then if we go to the next slide, we can see a comparison between what's happening in the United States compared to our area, Hillsborough County. So the five languages that are most spoken in homes in the United States, and this is data from 2017 to 2021, US Census Bureau. So we have Spanish, and that's probably not very surprising considering immigration patterns into the United States, followed by Chinese, Tagalog for people from the Philippines, Vietnamese, and Arabic. And look at this data there about the 22% of people in the US that speak a language other than English at home. That's 1 in 5. That's a lot of people. And of course, this does not mean that they are not fluent in English or proficient, but that means that they are using a language other than English at home for different reasons. And then if we shift to Hillsborough County, what do we see? Well, take a look at that number, 31%. In Hillsborough County, 31% of the population speaks a language other than English at home. That's like 1 in 3 people. That's even more than the national average of 22%. That just tells me, at least, that we're dealing with a much more multilingual landscape in Hillsborough County. And honestly, the most crucial number is 11.9%. That's 12% of people in our community that self-report that they speak English less than very well. So what does that mean to you in your organizations? Think about the work that you do. You may be serving people that are looking for job training. How can you accommodate those people? That's not a small number. That's about 170,000 people, approximately the size of the population of Clearwater. Like, that's a lot of people. So that's something for us to keep in mind when we think as who are we serving. As to languages spoken in Hillsborough County, the data that is available is from 2010. It's kind of a little old for something we're doing in 2025. But back then, obviously, Spanish was the most common language, and followed by Haitian Creole. So probably similar today, but we don't want to give you data that is not accurate. So that's something to keep in mind. So we're going to move on.
Yes, let's talk about because there is such a huge number of multilingual people. We want to hear from you. We promised you that this will be an interactive session, and we want to learn from you as much as we are giving you information. What are some challenges that your organization faces when serving multilingual clients? Can you
Yes.
please share with us in the chat and then we can share as a group?
So we
What are
want to
some
hear from you,
challenges?
so don't be shy, just right away. Staff who are bilingual speaking language. Yes, staffing issues. Very
Okay.
important, Danielle.
And it was
Staff
an
again.
interesting, yeah,
They
interesting
have staff.
comment. Mhm.
Translation, interpretation services, right?
And also somebody mentioned staff that speaks not only Spanish, but other languages.
Other
So there are
languages,
things, yeah.
yes. Translating website and forms, yes. Making forms accessible in different
Mhm.
languages, right? Resources, bilingual staff. Staffing is coming up as very, very, very relevant. And
Mhm.
workload, right? Nonprofits, we know we don't have all the resources we want. We want to have all the resources, but we don't. So
So
these things are pressing.
yeah, bilingual staff is unfairly given the bigger load because many of the clients don't
Yes.
speak any English and they're the only people
Yes.
who
What
can.
can we do?
Mm,
Lack of knowledge, like where to find resources to help us. These are great. Yes, all these are timely and very relevant. A few more, perhaps? I know we have about 1,000 people today.
but
We have
those were,
39 people. That's quite a bit. So,
I think those were very good, interesting, and coming
yes,
from the field comments. So we value this feedback from you.
yes. Some other things that we have heard. So we have cultural competence, humility. Yes. Training, intercultural training, I think is a big one that sometimes we don't
Mhm.
think about. It's, I don't know, I work with multilingual and Maya as well, populations for many years. And it's commonly believed that because you work with them, that you have the expertise. And it's not true. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily true. I think training is very important in that. Yes. Lack
Yes.
of awareness about norms and differences, super, super important. Yes, absolutely.
And here I would like to say that this is a short version of our face-to-face workshop where we talk a lot about exactly that, how cultural norms vary along cultures and differences and how they impact communication. And of course, we cannot cover all these topics in this short online session, but that is a good point. The
Yes,
people
very
need
good
that
point.
awareness of differences.
Intercultural competence training is key. So we're going to move on to something related to what you were just writing in the chat is how language access gaps undermine your mission. So we have 5 things here to briefly talk about. So all of our mission statements very likely include something that says that we serve everybody in the community that needs our services. But there could be a mismatch between what you say and what you do if gaps in language access are not addressed. Also, wasted resources. Somebody mentioned that bilingual staff is disproportionately impacted in having to do translations, interpretation, if others in our organization, they don't have those linguistic skills. So yes, you put a lot of emphasis on few people, and often, what could happen is somebody maybe even enroll in the wrong program, and that is wasted time and resources. This could translate in reputation risk. We don't want the word to spread in the community really quickly that don't go to X organization because, they don't speak my language, they don't understand me. Those things can happen, and those are reputation risks that are very, very difficult to undo once they happen. And I know you know this, that if you are receiving federal funds, you're legally required to provide language access. It's not an optional thing to do, it's something that you must do. And finally, are the invisible gaps. And that's when you start looking at your data at the end of the year and you review and you see, like, oh, there are so many no shows for this or that. And you may explain it in many different ways, but we want to encourage you to consider that it may be that there's a language barrier, that it's not clear for two people maybe what you can do for them. So all these things undermine your mission, and we need to keep these in mind as we do our training with our staff, as we talk about these very, very important things. And now I'm going to turn it to Maya, because language is very important. How we talk about things is really about dignity and inclusion. So it's important that we understand key terms. So go ahead, Maya.
Thank you. As an English teacher in the schools here in the United States, I've heard all of these terms. But I also noticed that some of our volunteers, they're not familiar, and certainly the multilingual clients are not familiar that they're called in with these terms. So let's review very quickly, how do we call multilinguals in the United States? The oldest term is non-native speaker. It circulated since the 1970s, and it's kind of a general term for all people who are not speaking English as their mother tongue. And then English as a second language became popular in the 50s, mainly among teachers who started calling their students English as a second language. But it was criticized, this term, for a long time for being very limited, because many people, including me, I speak several European languages, so English is not my second language. English is my fourth or fifth language. So that's the criticism. And then the term limited English proficient is very important. It was mandated by the Supreme Court, and it started the policy of providing help and support to language learners in the schools and also in public places, in public institutions. So limited English proficient is a legal term used by the Supreme Court, and also it's still used today, but again, it has that negative connotation. People try to avoid using it in their day-to-day communication. I try to avoid it because it shows deficit approach, and we know that people who are limited in their English language skills, they're not limited in their intellectual or academic abilities. So that's why people criticize this term. So nowadays, this term that you see at the top, English as an additional language, is becoming more popular, and encompasses the ESL, which is used to describe ESL programs, for example, or ESL skills for adults. ESOL, it's kind of a term that overarches all these other terms, and it's more inclusive. So if you move to the next slide, we see how changes are happening and how language is evolving to a more asset-based attitude and inclusive terminology. We call the ELL students or ESL students in schools multilingual learner. And this shows our respect for them, that language, knowing another language is a strength, and I firmly believe that. And non-native speakers, now we call them multilingual speakers, limited English proficient, English learners, or emergent bilinguals. So the language we use to describe these learners is evolving to a more positive attitude. So what in connection with that, we will provide you with some strategies how to adapt your communication and language, because you need to adapt. People who are limited English proficient, I'll use this term, although I don't want to use it, people who don't speak English really well, we have to adapt our communication. Why? Well, there are many, many big reasons why. The first you saw in the video. You can avoid the frustration of the mother with the sick child. You can avoid her stress, her despair, just by adapting your communication, slowing down, showing empathy, trying to understand, using a translation. So you want to avoid that frustration and misunderstanding that can happen. Also, when we adapt our language to people who don't speak English well, we engage them in our community. They don't feel that social distance, and this is one of the goals of our nonprofit, Nicer Florida. We want people to feel they belong by giving them this opportunity to connect with locals, to communicate, so we reduce that social distance. Also, when people see that you're trying to understand them, that you're trying to slow down your speech or using simple words or using gestures, they feel valued, they feel understood, and this builds that trust and connection with the person, which is very important. And as a legal ramification, if you provide modifications, if you provide clear language, people comprehend better the information. And for some institutions, it's a legal requirement to provide the correct information to people, so it's not misleading. And also, when people comprehend you better, they're able to share their ideas, their stories, their thoughts, and it brings fairness and equality to the conversation. And finally, language is culture. Language is identity. Every person through the language shows their identity. So when you respect their language, when you show that their language is important, you're trying to adapt your communication to understand them, you show the respect for their identity. So I thought it's very important to go over these reasons why we need to adapt. And moving on to the next slide, there are 6 levels that the government in the national reporting system delineated or created for to, um, to classify English language learners into 6 levels. Level 1 is literacy, then level 2 beginning, high beginning, and every level is described in the guide. We provide this resource in the references at the end of the presentation if you want to look at the whole table. But as an educator, as a longtime English teacher of English learners, I adapted that table to make it more simple. Why? Because a lot of our volunteers are not professional educators and they need a quick reference how they can identify the level of the person they're speaking with and how they can adapt their language. And adaptation, we already talked about that, how important it is to adapt your communication and your language. So this table is available also. I think Isabella sent it as an attachment. So we want to include an interactive activity again. And the activity is as follows. Mina has been in the US for 1 year. She can read simple instructions and recognize some English words, but she finds it challenging to write emails or fill out forms. She often feels frustrated when she tries to communicate with her children's teachers. So our first question for the chat is, can you identify her level, proficiency level? Is it level 1, 2, 3? Which English proficiency level best fits Mina? And maybe Ari, you can go back to the first
Yes,
table.
I'm going back. So you can refer to, and
Yeah.
she's gonna be probably in the first 3, I would say, just to make it easier.
Yeah. The first 3 are the very basic levels. The literacy level, which I don't like the word literacy, because it implies that people are illiterate if they don't speak English at all, but that might not be true. They may be highly educated in their language.
Very true.
Zakia says level 3. Casey says level 2, beginner, level 2 beginner. Majority say level 2, and you're correct. She's between 2 and 3, but I would tend to agree with level 2 because she cannot hold a simple conversation with the teacher. So some basic words, basic forms. All right. So let's go to the next question, Ari. What strategies can a staff member use to better serve Mina? So think about how can staff, could be a teacher, could be someone working in your organization. How can they adjust their communication and language so that Mina doesn't feel frustrated? She's better served. She understands what you're telling her as information.
And write in the chat strategies that you think you would use with somebody like Mina to communicate better with her.
And maybe, Ari, maybe not show my table so people can give their own ideas.
Okay,
and then we
I can do that. I'm being too helpful.
Providing documentation in their language. Excellent, excellent. Speaking slowly, providing additional time with the parent. Translation software, using simple words and phrases. Some apps can assist now. That is so great that you have these great ideas.
Jelena, you want to share something?
Yeah.
No, sorry. There was someone asking me. Sorry.
Hi, Jelena. I know Jelena.
Hi.
So ask questions, speak slowly, demonstrate. Very good.
Excellent. So what does it take for people to apply these strategies? What does it take? It takes goodwill, I think. That's all. It takes goodwill, and if you're willing to understand and help, just empathy, and you will find a way. But also tables like that, resources like that can help to give to staff. Here are some strategies that you can use.
Exactly. And if I could add something, Maya, it's for organizations to plan in your staff meetings that I'm sure you have, plan time, set aside time to practice these things with role plays.
Exactly.
Like, how can you ensure that the person feels heard and that they belong by using these strategies? I think that in my opinion, it's very, very important to do
and
that.
I like, yes, and I agree. And I like Zakia saying patience and compassion.
Patience,
they're
compassion.
not language strategies. If you think about that, patience, that's a human strategy. It's not a language strategy. So all you need is to be human, empathetic, and have a compassion.
And we know that in your organizations, time is of the essence and staff is not as plentiful as you would want. But still, keeping in mind that being patient, giving person the time to communicate, to express, even to draw something, it really goes definitely a long, long way. Okay. So now that we have talked a little bit about language and language strategies, I think it's a good time to talk about culture. And I think I'm pretty sure that many of you have seen this image at some point in your lives. It's very popular. This image is from like the 1970s, is the cultural iceberg. And it shows two things that I think are relevant: the surface part and the deep part. And often what we see is the surface part of a culture. For example, a lot of us, I love to go to multilingual festivals where you have like the food, the dances, you're able to look at arts and crafts, but that's all just the surface part of a culture. That 90% that it's at the bottom part of the iceberg that is not so visible, are things that in all of our cultures, including American culture, those are the things that are very, very, not a salient, but it's like the deep culture. And what does that mean? Well, let's think about, you might have heard this is Hofstad's is his name, this cultural dimensions, and he divides cultures between collectivist cultures and individualistic cultures. And cultures in the West tend to be grouped as more individualistic. But I want to caution you about something. It's a continuum. There's no culture that is 100% one thing or the other. But those things are in the they're deep culture, not as visible attitudes about how you make decisions. You may have a client that needs to confer with their family before deciding on something, while somebody in the West may decide that on the spot. Like, those are things that we need to keep in mind as we serve multilingual populations. So we may have a client that, let me give you a simple example. In the West, we value direct eye contact because it communicates trust, it communicates confidence, it communicates all of those things. However, in some cultures, things are more hierarchical, and somebody that who may perceive themselves as being in a lower status may not be making direct eye contact with you. And that does not mean that the person is disrespectful or shy, or they are not to be trusted. So why does it matter? This matters because as you encounter different people, you have another explanation. You have an explanation that could fit that situation, with the caveat that we can never be an expert in any culture except our own, and I would say ourselves. Like, nobody can really know every aspect of any culture. I don't know if you want to add anything about this, Maya.
Yeah, and because culture is invisible in most cases, it leads to misunderstandings. So, going back to the next slide, going back to strategies that we can use, some from language strategies to more general cross-cultural strategies that we can use to overcome these misunderstandings. There are many, and we mentioned already some, but I would like to talk about two of them real quick. Nonverbal communication and ask and tell and ask strategy. In nonverbal communication, a lot of misunderstandings can happen. One example, in Middle Eastern countries, if you show a thumbs up, it's very offensive. While in Western cultures, thumbs up is a positive thing. So it can lead to a lot of negative feelings if you don't know that. So you need to be careful about understanding nonverbal language of people and learning about that specific culture. Ask, tell, ask strategy come also in public education, where I taught. It's called the KWL strategy. The strategy is you ask people what they already know on the topic or the form or some information. Then you tell them the new information, and then you make sure you ask to see if they understood. So these are two strategies that people can use. And moving on to other strategies, as we promised today to give you more, I will talk briefly about universal design for learning, which is a framework. So going to the next slide, Ari.
Oh, actually, we need to talk about identity first.
Oh, okay.
We'll do that later. We're being mindful of the time because we know we want to give enough time for you to share your thoughts and questions. So identity and culture are intertwined. And this is a quote from a researcher and linguist. Her name is Bonnie Norton. And this is what she says. Every time we speak, we are negotiating networks of social relationships. We are negotiating and renegotiating our sense of self in relation to the larger social world and reorganizing that relationship. And what I like about this quote is this idea that every time we utter words in different settings, really our identity is shifting. We don't present ourselves the same way in every encounter. And take a look at that image on the right. We have culture, language, and identity. That's a Venn diagram. So they work together. So our clients, when they come and they use English, their identity has shifted just because of that choice. I don't know if you have heard this, but I have. And how true this is, I don't know, but I like it. That when we speak a different language, we're really presenting ourselves differently, like we're almost like a different person. So, why does this matter to us? Because when people come to see us, we need to remember this. We could have a client who in the United States may work in a factory building things, but this person might have been a doctor in Cuba, for example. These things happen and are common because they are rebuilding a new life and there are many obstacles for them. So understanding the idea of, I think I saw some of the comments, belonging, respect, like how that is important to show and demonstrate in our interactions, and to understand that identities are in flux. Our identities are as well. So these are things to keep in mind as we go. And something related to this topic that we don't think enough about is the idea of accent stigma. And I want to start by saying that everyone has an accent, everyone in the world, because there are different varieties of accent. And if we talked about American English, there is a so-called standard accent, which I'm going to say as a linguist, I reject that notion, but I think it's useful when we explain things about communication. The standard accent is one is the most mainstream, right? And people say there's no accent, people that in NPR, well, no, they do have an accent, but it's so common and embedded that we don't hear it. But imagine people that come from other countries, like Maya and me, we have accents, right? And research tells us that people that have foreign accents may be perceived as less intelligent, less competent, and even less trustworthy. Imagine this. And this is something that we don't want to do, but we do because this is how our brains work. All of us, all of us. And the idea of stereotype threat, I think, is critical for our discussion, because stereotype threat comes about when a person for a particular language group, cultural group, may feel that they are being perceived negatively and they may avoid approaching a service provider because they don't want to be stereotyped. So why are we saying all this? Because in our training sessions with our staff, we need to talk about these things and what can we do to help our clients feel that they belong, to feel that they are heard, and to feel that they are respected. So we need to find ways to break this cycle. And now Nadia is going to talk about the universal design for learning strategies.
Yes, I will just briefly introduce it as another framework that provides great strategies. The idea came from a nonprofit called CAST, and it involves three big principles of design: the multiple means of engagement, providing people with multiple ways to be engaged and motivated. Our focus today will be on multiple means of representation of information, because our multilingual clients need multiple ways to understand the information. It could be audio, digital, print, translation. You mentioned a lot of these. So all this is part of this framework, UDL, and language supports. We will proceed with an interactive activity where we will ask you to use the UDL, the Universal Design for Learning in Action. So can you introduce this activity, Ari?
So yes, for this activity, what we would like you to do is to take a look at this language and this form, an intake form, and thinking about the idea of representation and multiple ways to present information. What is one thing that you would change about this form? And please use the chat for your answers. And remember, for representation, we mean we want different people. And in this case, we're talking about language barriers, but this could apply for all kinds of things. We want to make the information we provide accessible to everyone. So if you can write what would be something you would change about this chart, about this form in the chat, and we will monitor the chat and see what you're coming up with.
Yeah, Zakia already shared straight lines and shorter sentences, easier words. Jelena? Easier words, meaning shorten the sentences, maybe simplify language. Okay.
Yes. Simplified language. Composition is in a simple word. Word choice, right? Word choice.
Household composition, yes.
Maybe a few others that you can come up with.
And now I'm thinking that even those forms that use a complicated language, even the translation apps can probably translate them incorrectly because the
really
words
help.
have so many.
Yes, absolutely.
Offering it in multiple languages.
Yes, yes.
Check a box instead of write it out.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes, some people cannot write in English, so maybe just check the box will be easier.
Yes.
The font.
Font. So we're going to show you now. It's not perfect, we know, but this could be a simplified version. And a lot of the things that you said are, you can see here. You have icons that you can use. Simpler language, not a lot of text. And even just putting, one thing that is not, well, here at the bottom, you have like a little icon for house so the person would understand, right? Like little symbols that can help. And at the very, very bottom, something like if you need help with language, what language do you speak? And this could be done in the most common languages other than English for the populations that you serve. It could be easily done to simplify the steps, I think. So you can see this will be applicable and it would appeal to people, even if somebody may not be able to read or write. There are lots of words, but if you use icons, it could help with that. So we are mindful of the time. So we are at the end of our presentation, and we want to reiterate a few things that we talked about today. We talked about the linguistic landscape in the United States and Hillsborough County. We also talk about cultural strategies that we can use to help our clients, universal design for learning. Am I missing anything?
No, pretty much. We wish we had more time.
Yes,
like
but we can do something longer and more in person and more to the point. So we would like to hear from you. We can do this in several ways. You can raise your hand or you can put question in the chat. We have about 10 minutes. 10 minutes for this part. This learning to be the rest of your life. Yes, and it's so beautiful, Michelle, that we learn every day. We learn every day, Michelle. So I agree with that. And it's really beautiful to learn these different things.
So how do these ideas connect with your own experiences? Did you think about something specific during the presentation? Maybe a challenge, a misunderstanding, cross-cultural?
Something you might want to learn more even.
Yeah, or something that you would like to learn more on this topic. Like I said, in our face-to-face workshop, which is 3 hours, we include a lot of interaction and cultural differences. But our time limit today limits us in what we presented. But your reflections and your experiences are really important. So if you can share something.
We have time. You can raise your hand. Maybe there is a situation that is happening at work. You want to share. It's totally welcome. We have 35 of you.
Yeah, and if you want to talk,
It helps with understanding how to simplify forms for enrollments. Absolutely. Some things that you can do, definitely. You can
if
raise your
anyone,
hand if it's useful or something that you want to know more. Acceptable cultural behaviors. This is all, that's all a workshop in itself. That's a workshop in itself. And we would love to do something like that. Yeah, there are so many, right?
yes, we only touched a few things,
A
but
few things, but there are so many. Space, even how close you stand to someone, like how all that nonverbal communication, all of those things. Yes, we feel that. We feel that the current situation in the government right now could threaten a lot of the regulations about access. I think some school districts are being impacted as what they can do, and I know schools are being very, very, what is the word, adaptable, because even if a regulation goes away, you still have to serve the clients, right? Like it's not like, oh, now we don't have to provide accommodations just because it's not the law, for example. But we do feel that they are threatened for sure. Maybe any something you want to know more. We heard something. Um, this was the tip of the iceberg, if we could say this. Yes, of course, if it's possible, we want to still do it, right? Absolutely, absolutely.
and I'm sure that in your daily work, you encounter conversations with clients where they had issues being misunderstood or not being provided services. Recently, I talked to one of our Ukrainian students, and she's an advanced speaker of English. However, when she called an insurance company, the lady just said, "Call me back when you have someone with you who speaks English well, because I cannot explain to you." And her name is Anna. Anna was very disappointed because her English is really good. What she could not understand is the details, the specific information that the insurance agent was asking her. So we see these misunderstandings and this lack of awareness and empathy can impact a person's life, even their
So
health.
in that case, Maya, that's a proficient speaker of English, and someone getting blocked because the person perhaps has an accent. So all of those things are things to discuss with our staff. I think is critical. And I'm reading the comment about universal design because yes, universal design is huge, and I would say that you could in your own organizations review that chart about universal design, and if you would like us to do something about this targeted to your organizations, we would be happy to. More deeply about the emotional capacity. Accountants, yes, we need this in every language, absolutely. How it's culturally different too. Yes, the joy that people feel, Kayla, when we speak to them in their language and we attempt it. Even doing something like some useful phrases, the languages that are common among the people that come to see you, it goes such a long way because the person sees, the person feels, you see me,
Yes.
I exist, I'm not invisible. It's so, so
And
priceless.
you
I
respect my
agree.
language, you respect who I am, you
Yes,
respect my life, you respect my experience that I bring. So it's language and identity are the same
yes,
thing. So when you
absolutely.
speak their language, you respect their identity and them as people. So that's why it's important to adapt our communication or learn a little bit from their language and learn a little bit about their culture as well.
Absolutely. And here there are some photos of the work that we do in the community, workshops or trainings or tutoring. We just wanted to include these so you could see it all
Yes.
happens in community settings, and it's very, very powerful, very beautiful. And we would like to stay in touch with you. You can reach us. That's Maya's email. That's her organization. That's my email. That is the longest in the world. I know. That's my website. And we could, I mean, we're delighted to be here, to be sharing a little bit of what we know, what we do, with the hope that it inspires you in your organizations to, do what we call like an inventory of language access. Go back and see what are the things that we're doing, where are the gaps, some things that we can do well. And of course, this was only the tip of the iceberg. So, but there's so much more to explore. But in 45 minutes, we wanted to give you like a taste of the different issues, and we hope that you enjoyed it.
Yes, I do hope so. And we learned very useful information from you. Your feedback is important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Denise. Thank you to everybody that joined us.
And a big thank you to you, Ari and Maya, for sharing this incredibly informative and timely presentation. And yes, if anyone has any more questions, feel free to email Ari. Yeah.
We'll share the PDF will be shared, by the way.
We'll be sharing the PDF as well as the recording of today's presentation. And a big thank you to all of you for joining us today.
Yes, big thank you.
Yes, we hope you have a great afternoon and be on the lookout for more webinars coming your way.
Thank you so much. Hasta luego. Nos vemos pronto. Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.
Bye, Naya. Bye, Isabella. And Maria.
Bye-bye.